Chapter 2. So, Chapter 2 basically just starts with what the definition of folklore is. And it just mentions that throughout history, there has been stories of shields and spears in the sky. Like during medieval times, there were reports of shields flying in the sky. And then it mentions the Nuremberg Buchor, which shows and glows like fighting in the sky. And it just mentions like glowing balls and things like that, like reports from earlier in time, like during the Middle Ages and the 15 and 1600s. And then it gives like a story of a paranormal investigator in the 1820s, Mr. Cummins. And Mr. Cummins was basically the author says that he might be the first paranormal investigator in the United States. Whether that's true or not, I'm not sure. But basically, Mr. Cummins lives in a town, and there's a young woman, and she dies. And after she dies, there are reports that her ghost has been seen throughout the town. And Mr. Cummins investigates. And one night, two men approached Mr. Cummins, and they said that they saw the ghost of this woman. And Mr. Cummins decides to investigate, and he goes to a field, and he sees something that he describes as a white rock. And then the white rock, kind of like a light, he gets closer to this quote unquote white rock, and something comes out of the white rock, and it's like a figure, which has the appearance of a child. And this was in a field at night. And then Mr. Cummins, he can't speak, so he communicates with this entity telepathically. And then he thinks, this figure seems like a child. Like he doesn't seem like the woman that died. And then all of a sudden the figure transforms into the figure of a woman. And then the next thing he knows, Mr. Cummins is back at home, and he doesn't recollect how he got there. And then the author mentions that this story, which happened on the 1820s, it reminisces modern alien abduction events, where people see something, and the next thing they know, they're found like on a different location, and they don't know how they got there. So that was a nice little story. And there was like another small story in the chapter where in 1978, some type of doctor, professor, some woman, she gets a hold of a diary from the early 1800s, which happens to be her husband's great-great-grandmother's diary. And she was basically, it seems that she was some type of gender studies professor from the 1970s. So she gets a hold of this diary and she reads it. And it's from a woman named Cynthia, I believe. Yeah, Cynthia Everett. And in this diary, Cynthia Everett describes that she was in her room one night and she saw a light outside her window. And then she saw it and she describes that the light was moving up and down in the sky. And she couldn't explain why. And that's pretty much it. That's all that she describes. Then Cynthia Everett describes, and she doesn't keep a diary until she marries. And this was back in the 1810 or something like that, way back. And just the author mentions that these stories could be categorized as folklore. And it was just a small little chapter, but the story with Mr. Cummings, which he was a reverend, it was pretty good.